Welcome to Mimir, the podcast for ambitious entrepreneurs who want to launch and grow a successful business from day one. I'm your host, Maddie Kelly, and each week I sit down with founders who have been there, done that. We dive into the mindset, strategies, and practical tools you need to turn your vision into a reality. So let's get to work. Hey guys, welcome back to Mimir. If you've ever worked late, poured your own money into something you believe in, and still felt like you're screaming into the void, this episode is for you. I am sitting down with Cindy Ip, the founder of Habitude, a skincare studio in Toronto that's part beauty bar, part emotional reset button. Cindy is not here to glamorize the founder journey. She's here to tell the truth. The parts we don't always see, the ones that feel messy, discouraging, and sometimes hilarious in hindsight. Together, we talk about what happens when you start from zero, spending your own money on ads that go nowhere, wondering if anyone will ever care about what you're building, straddling two worlds like being amazing at your 9 to 5 while building a dream after hours, and showing up online when it feels vulnerable and not always super cute. Cindy shares why she's choosing to slow down, why she restructured her pricing, why she's pivoting intentionally, not because she's failing, but because she's listening to herself, to her audience, and to the world around her. She's building a business designed to make people pause, and in doing so, she's redefining what growth can look like, sometimes quiet, grounded, and human. We laughed a lot during this episode. We also said the quiet parts out loud, the things founders feel but don't always share. And if you're in the thick of it, wondering why it feels so hard or when things will finally click, this episode is here to remind you that you're not behind, you're just building something unique to your journey. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Cindy to the podcast. So, how did I get here? That is such a good question. I ask myself that every day. So I was born. Yeah. So I started my career as a graphic designer many, many, many years ago. And from there, my mom really pushed me to really get into marketing. She's like, you got to make money. Because I've always been really into the arts. I was an English major. I love reading books. Love that kind of escapism stuff. And my mom was like, you need to get a real job and have a real career. So after that, I started getting. I worked as a graphic designer, which is great. I got to do creative stuff, but it was for corporate. So it wasn't that creative. But after that, I started getting certifications. I got my master's in marketing. I'm doing my MBA now. So I've really built, my career, in marketing, professionally. And I like to see my life. No, it's kind of all the same, but there are separate lanes that kind of merge together, right? So I have my professional lane, where I'm a marketer. I built up a career, I run campaigns, really, really good at it, work in tech, right? And there's the other lane, where, I am just learning, I'm learning about, what it's like to, build a business, right? What it's like to, start from scratch, right? Because when you work for someone else, you're handed warm leads, right? You're basically given people who are warmed up to your business and your idea. But when you start on your own, when you're doing your own thing, it's really, really difficult. And I'm learning this. It's really, really difficult to get people to care. So I would say what these two streams have done is given me a really broad understanding of, okay, what does success look like and what does struggling look like, right? So that's really where I'm at today.
That's perfect. Honestly, I couldn't relate more to what you're saying. I feel like I'm totally in the same space. One half is building a really sick career and I'm enjoying it so much and it's so much fun. And then the other half is like you said, you're building a business, you're learning a completely different skill set. And as much as we try to leverage that experience about okay, no, I know how to run a campaign. I know how to build a marketing strategy. but it feels so different when you're doing it for a business that, like you said, like doesn't have warm leads. And I love the way that you described that, because I haven't been able to really articulate that yet either. And it's exactly right. Like there is a disconnect, and I think this is something I've always been trying to isolate between when is that inflection point that like it becomes a little bit easier to get leads, because it's like, once you're semi-established, you're still chasing, but you're not like running at zero. So, what has been your experience with that thus far? Like, how have you done that? I know community is super important to Habitude, so I'm sure you have a lot of insight there.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say I'm still learning this myself, so I'm not like, it's not like, I wouldn't say I'm not successful by any means, so
Yeah.
this is like, I'm learning, like, as I'm doing, right. But and on this point, like I'm actually taking a step back with Habitude. I'm kind of like dialing it back a little bit because I want to pivot. Like I put a lot of, money, a lot of effort. I felt like I did everything right. Like in the corporate world, if I ran a campaign, like I ran, Habitude Beauty, like I know, like I would get something out of it, right? Because I've done it so many times and I see so much success,
Yeah.
and so, like to see the contrast and see, like how different it is. Like I don't want to use the word failure because I don't see it as failure. I see this as a learning experience and I see it as an opportunity for me to
Yeah.
pivot. So I'm actually dialing back right now and I'm reassessing where I want to go. And, to your point, like building a community is it's definitely something that I want to do. And I think it's, again, to your point, it's really important. And, I don't know, I haven't reached that inflection point where, suddenly you're attracting and not chasing anymore. Like I'm not there. So I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know. Well, like maybe we'll do this again. I'll let you know. Like
Yes.
when either of us like get there, right? But yeah, I would say like, yeah, I think that is my lesson right now. Like I'm like, and, if I know this is a podcast and other people are listening, like if anybody else is like at this point, like it's just to do it and just go, right? Like just,
Yeah.
if like, don't worry about failure, like, fall on your face, people will relate, I think.
Well, no, I think this is the realest conversation I've ever had, because I'm at this point right now and it's so hard. And I guess like maybe I think the reason like why we're having this conversation is because I don't think that people talk about this part. Like, I think, at least I'm guessing, because who knows? I haven't done it yet.
Mhm.
But I'm assuming that you would basically just have to, I guess in my like marketing mind, right? I'm thinking about it from like, if we just keep testing and we just keep trying and we just keep putting it out there, eventually it will stick. And so like we're having to quote unquote fail like time and time again, because at the same time it's building like some brand awareness that's just like not trackable, and you kind of just have to like write that off as like, well, it'll come back around sometime someday.
Mhm.
And simultaneously testing messaging and like finding what resonates, so every time you refine and get a little bit better.
Mhm.
So I think like maybe that is like the potent combo that eventually will lead you to when you kind of like hit your stride for the first time. And then I feel like once you hit that stride, like the inflection point is nearer. But until then, it's just like we're running up against walls to figure out what works. Because even me, like I tried to do an ad for the podcast and it was like such a flop. And it was so frustrating because I'm like, I just poured my own personal money into this, and you're trying to figure out why it didn't work. But sometimes like it just doesn't work because it doesn't work. Like it's not like I did anything wrong per se, but it's just like, okay, well maybe I have to try a different platform, or maybe I have to refine the CTA, maybe I have to like change the messaging. So it's just sort of like, okay, it is what it is. We'll try something else or try something different, and until something works. But like it until then you're just testing and trying, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah. No, I totally relate to that. I actually, did some paid ads, and honestly, it hurts so much more when like it's coming out of my own wallet. Like I'm used to spending other people's money, when it comes to advertising. but spending my own money hurts so much. And like, to be like, oh no, like I just spent $30. Like, how come, like, why isn't anybody like, booked, right? Like like yeah, like I totally, I feel that from like the deepest part of my soul, because like you said, like I know, like I did everything right. This is how we do it. Like I A/B tested, right? Like I optimized. I'm at like 9 cents per click right now.
You did the things right.
Good. Like but yeah. So I don't. Like again, this is something that like I'm trying to figure out. Like maybe like I'll put this out into the universe. Anybody who's listening to this podcast, like reach out to one of us if you know like how to, what to do, please. Like,
yeah, truly. Like, if you've been at this point, like, please help us.
Yeah, like this is a plea on a podcast right now.
But honestly, though, I think you don't give yourself enough credit because, like, you've clearly built something meaningful. Like, you have clients who love your product and are very interested in what you're building. And I think there's something to be said for that. And so, like, I guess, like, from another angle, how did you approach validating your concept? Because uniquely for you, like, you did this while working full time. And I know that that's a struggle because I do it right now. And it's just like, it's one of those things where people are like, oh, how do you time manage? And I'm like, I don't know. And I'm really good at time management. You just like, honestly, it's a grind and you just have to push through it. But I think importantly, like validating the concept is a critical portion, especially for you, like very service based. So like, what did that look like for you?
Yeah. So, I was working full time to pay for this business, so I was working full time. I validated it with my friends. So my loyalist clients are actually my friends, so, like, I'm glad that like they come back because I also feel like, like friends are a really good place to start. They're also some of your most honest critics too, because they're not afraid to tell you, like, when you're doing something wrong, they're like, I don't like this, like they're not afraid to tell you. So my, definitely, I validated a lot of it, with my friends. In addition to working and building this, I was also in school. I was in beauty school at the same time because to be an esthetician, so you can't just like,
right.
to be an esthetician, like, you need to like, get your schooling in, right? You need to get your certification. So I was also in beauty school, which was a lot of fun, to be honest, right? Like it's not like academic school, like it's a lot less intense. And most of the time you're just, there, like, sitting and like, just doing facials. And it's really hands-on. And I've learned that I like that, like, as much as, I like, I did pretty well in school. Like I did okay, but like, I'm a hands-on kind of person. I learned that, through this. So, so I was doing all these things. How did I, and time manage again, people were asking me like, how do you do all this? I'm like, I don't know. I'm at work from like 9 to 5 and then from 6 to 9, I'm in school and then, I have 2 hours to eat, when I come back and then, I'm in bed and then I do it all over again, so I don't know. Like, I just, it's like, it's not, it's something and you probably relate to this. It's something that you just do, when you're in that situation, right? You just need to get it done. So
I think it's about priorities too, like how much this, and I think that this is the point when like you weed out the weak, like how bad do you want this and what are you willing to do to make it happen? And if that answer is I'm willing to work after work, like then you'll get to the next phase. But without that, like you just put it on the back burner. And not that there's anything wrong with that. I think everyone's on their own journey and I respect that everyone has a different path to where they're going. And so I always believe that like you should follow your intuition in that way and be like, if this feels right to push now, push now. But it really is more about like, what are your priorities right now? And like, how does that fit in with your schedule? And you just sort of make it happen. Otherwise it just isn't going to happen. Like, and I think that no amount of time management can solve for that last little bit of like, do you want this badly enough?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And to be honest, like this life isn't for everyone. I don't recommend it. Like this is, because like the payoff, like where's the payoff, right? Like I put all this money, all this effort and all this time into this, but but like, a year in, I'm still, trying to figure it out, right? So yeah, I don't recommend it. Like this is, and then like to your point, like you have to really want it, right? Like, that's why, people say like, are you passionate about it? And that's why like, when you get VC funding, for example, like they look for passion because like, are you willing to push through, like the first 2-3 years of nobody giving, any cares, for what you're doing, like, and making $0,
Yeah. And I think that's also why I'm so intrigued by what you're building, because I think it's so, like, your approach is so interesting. I think, most facial places, beauty bars, spas, like facial studios, they're all about like outcomes. It's all about like, why are you here and what are you trying to get out of it? Whereas for you, it's more of a place of pause. It's a place to, shift your energy and your emotions. There's like a deeper purpose to that, which I really, really think is amazing and like something that I personally resonate. And like, first of all, I'd love for you to talk about that and like how you're creating this and like what that looks like and sort of like the why behind the what, because I'm personally fascinated by it and I think it's such an like, I don't know why anybody hasn't thought about it like that before.
Yeah. So the why behind the why. So I like things to be effortlessly, I want to say beautiful, but like it's not, yes, but like also like I want things to be like effortless, right? Like that's kind of like my MO. I think, with anything, like the energy that like the founder, or whoever, brings to the business is what is the energy that the business carries, right? Like not to sound like, too woo woo, but like, these,
That's
they
true.
become the, yeah, it's true, right? It becomes like the operational foundations, right? So, if, and for me, like I need it, right? Like I need to pause. Like, I work in tech, which is like so hectic, as right? Like we were just talking
Yeah,
about this
it's a
earlier.
lot.
It's crazy, right? Because it's all about like, you got to do this and da da da, and like you got to
How
do it
fast can
fast.
you move?
Yes,
It
how
really
fast
is
can
like
you?
the beauty of tech and something that like I love is it's totally an adrenaline rush. It's like the way that we can turn shit out is so unique and it's so fun because like especially in marketing we can just like pivot really quickly and we can do things way faster than like an enterprise can, but at the same time I get home at the end of the day and I feel like I've been spinning around in a circle as fast as I possibly can all day, and the second my butt hits the couch it's like, whoa, holy crap, like I can catch my breath. And so I'm with you, like I need the pause.
Yeah.
I need that space so bad.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it, and so I built my business, based on that, right? Like one, I know we all have busy lives, so that's why, like, in terms of like how I created the services, like it's I use flexible timing, right? So you can choose, based on your availability, because like we don't have kids, but like my clients have kids, right? Like, they need to work around, those schedules, right? And make time for themselves, right? So that's really it. Like, from like a business standpoint, in terms of how I structure the services, like if we were to think about this as like a product, right? It would be, modular, right? Like you can, choose your tier essentially. So yeah, so that's kind of like, my thinking, right? Like I bring a lot of like my tech thinking, into this. Not on purpose. I think it's just what I know, right? So
Yeah.
so yeah, yeah.
It's so smart. Like I talked to somebody else the other day, like she's building an activewear brand.
Ooh.
And the way that she thinks about her product is from a digital perspective because she worked in tech also and she was a product designer. And so she literally talks about like beta testing her products. And I think that's so fascinating because the beauty of what we work in every day is that it's a fast-paced, like nimble, agile experience. And to not apply that same principle to any other product or service, like to me, seems silly because it's just such an easier way of working. Like as a founder, you're able to really do more with less and move faster, much more easily. So like I think that that's really smart, and I'm sure that the messaging has like really well resonated with your community, and like I would imagine that you've seen some return on the way that you're talking about the experiences that you're building.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Definitely have seen returns, and I'm very grateful for that. But like, again, like, going back to like the kind of systems, thinking like, I have been thinking about, kind of the future of where I want to go. And, which is why, like I mentioned earlier, I'm at a stage where, I want to pivot, right? Because, I want more people to care, and I think, one of the things that like I haven't done is I haven't like put myself out there, and like that's my fault, right? Like, for being shy, I think. Yeah, it's, yeah, so I need to change that.
But
Which
it's
is
really
why
hard. It's not like I go back and forth on this, and I was literally talking to my boss about this today because she literally said, like, she's been working in marketing for 15 years and she's built a really amazing career, and she's such a dope lady. Like, I truly love and respect her. And she got accepted to the speaking gig and whatever, and then that led her to like start posting on LinkedIn. And she was saying how she felt like before it was like purely like an insecurity thing, that she felt like her own experience like wasn't valid enough for her to be able to start speaking and like putting her voice out there. And obviously like that's just, based on like a barrier that she created herself. But something that I always think about is it's like there's a real trade-off for me, and I don't know how to reconcile this, where like, yes, you can absolutely like be putting yourself out there way more, and like what that looks like can vary, but I think the traditional answer is like social media. But there's so much that comes with that I'm not sure that I'm willing to do. And then like from a founder perspective, I'm like, am I sacrificing my business's success because I don't want to deal with some of the like negative shit that you have to deal with when it comes to social media? Like, I love YouTube. I love vlogging. If I had more time, I would do it. Like, it's just really fun for me. I enjoy the process. But at the same time, I'm like, what level of scrutiny do I want to put myself under? Like, how much of a microscope do I want to live under? How much of people's opinions do I want to be listening to on a day-to-day basis? The answer I know for myself is like, I don't. But there's no way that you can get around that if you start posting about your experience as a founder, which sucks because I'm like, I want to share what I'm building because I think it could be really valuable, and like I think it could impact a lot of people in a great way. But like, is this the only answer,
Yeah, no, I totally hear you on that. I definitely had that fear for the longest time. I saw like all these like TikTok kids like get famous, and I'm like, oh, I'm still working, like, like that could be me, like if I wasn't too shy to dance in 2020, like, could have been like Charlie D'Amelio or whatever,
No, truly.
right? But I think more recently, and so one of my really best friends, I'll tell you the story. One of my really best friends, he is, a fashion designer here in Toronto. He, does beautiful like non-binary fashion. It's like been one of my celebrities. It's amazing. And he did a post once. Yeah, I know. He's amazing. And like he did a post once, and he got so much hate in it, like because because people are haters, right? And I remember he and I went for brunch once, and like right after that, and we were talking about it. I was like, this is your most engaged post. Like it had like, 1 million views, like hundreds of comments, so like we sat there and we were like, how can we piss off the haters? Like what else can you do? Right. So like, you can flip it around, right? Because like, listen, the haters give you engagement, right?
True.
They increase your reach for better or worse. So,
well, it's like that old adage, like all press is good press. But you're right. Like there is something to be said for that. That's like, I guess maybe it comes down to like, do you have a thick skin, and are you comfortable enough to just see that and be like, oh, whatever, who cares? Like they're just, random people saying mean shit about me, like whatever, not everyone's gonna like me, and you just sort of like move on with your life. I don't know the answer. And I guess maybe like I don't know until I try, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, you just need like, a bunch of haters like on a post and then see how you react. Just go through it.
My way.
No, I'm just kidding. You're not going to get any haters. No. You're amazing.
Thank you. Pivoting slightly, something that we talked about off air that I think is really interesting is you are like really mindful about not rushing growth. And I think this is something that's like very unique to you that I really haven't heard a lot about. And I think it's a really interesting take. And like, it's definitely influenced me a little bit also, because I think as founders, like we build something and we want to put it out there and then we want to get immediate results. And like, that's just not how life works all the time. And like, it is kind of a slow burn. And I think to hear you talk about like being really purposeful about that and mindful, like that's such a different way of thinking about it. And I just would love for you to like double click into that a little bit.
Yeah. I feel like some of it is, it's not exactly by design. Like, like most people, I am so impatient, right? But I do see the value in building slowly and purposefully, because otherwise I think it would be a disaster. I think that, the opposite, of going too quickly and making mistakes with your own money is a lot worse. Like I think, working in tech, like we have the luxury of, spending other people's money on marketing. And, if you fail, it's like, it's okay. We can pivot. We'll try again. Right.
Yeah.
We just burned $100,000. Yeah. But like, it's not my money, but like when it's your own money, I'm definitely taking a much more purposeful approach to it. Only because, I earned every dollar that I have. And, I mean, I don't know if it's the right approach for everyone, because it also means slower returns. Because it's a payoff, right? You either put in time or money, right? To like, these are the only two, like, if you kind of see success as a thing that you put effort into, the effort that you put into it's either time or money, right? It's either your own time or your time or somebody else's time or money, right? You throw money at it and, you get some sort of payoff, right? But I'm building more purposefully and slowly because I don't have a whole lot of money. I'm using my own funds, right?
That's so real.
That's why, so that's why it's by design, right? And that's kind of my approach to business too. I just recently restructured all of my pricing because I had to look at. I did an analysis of the economy and in Toronto. I did. Because what I initially did was I priced my services based on competition, right? I was like, oh, everybody's charging so much, like me too, right? But then I learned that's not the right way to price your services, right? Because there's a demand curve. And I didn't take that into account, right? And the demand curve requires you to look at, okay, what stage are you at, right? If you're brand new, nobody knows you, you don't have a warmed up audience, the demand is low, right?
Right.
Another thing that I looked at was, what is the propensity? I looked at the disposable income that's available for, for my target audience in Toronto. And when I looked at the chart, these last few years has been quite difficult, for a lot of people. And like, it's not nobody's fault, right? It's
just the economy.
Yeah. It's just the economy. It's just the world we live in today, right? We have good years and we have bad years, and so we're going through one of the bad years right now, so I kind of, lowered, my prices based off that. So I looked at the economy. I looked at demand for my services, and I looked at disposable income for my target audience, and I kind of use that to reprice my services. So, and again, this goes back to being more intentional in terms of how I'm building my business. And it's also the reason why I'm reeling back, because I'm predicting that things will be a little bit more difficult, later this year, because again, nobody's fault, it's not, it's just the world that we live in today, which is why, another reason why I'm rolling back and scaling back, because I have a physical business, I have inventory, that I need to manage, that I need to pay for and buy, right? I have a space, that I need to pay for, right? So, so that's in terms of like thinking, growing slowly and intentionally, that's, part of it.
Oh God, this is such a real moment. And I appreciate this so much, because there's like such a fine balance for me between inspo and reality. And it's so crucial for me to make sure that like everybody is hearing that entrepreneurship is not linear. Like, it's wackadoodle route and it's uniquely based on your experience. But I think you're also being really smart and thinking through this. And like, I believe in purposeful growth. I don't want to grow for growth's sake. Like, especially because we don't have external stakeholders. Like, I don't have a VC up my butt asking me like how I'm going to get 40% ROI this year. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's no reason for that. And so it makes more sense to be more strategic. And like, I think I also just sort of realized that I was really impatient. And I think I just had all of these expectations that you start a business, and if you put in the work, that if you work really, really hard, that you'll get there faster. And unfortunately, I just like don't believe that that's the case. Like, I think that some things just take time, and depending on it depends on what business you're into. Like, this is completely different. I feel like if you have a physical product or like a digital product, like you might be having a different experience. But with something like my podcast and like service-based stuff, like it just takes time, and like you have to understand and be willing to be okay with that. And that was like something that I had to overcome personally, because it felt like failure, that it didn't happen in this like unrealistic time expectation that I had set for myself based on like ego and like what I wanted to have happen, and like this, fantastic idealistic dream that I had, which I still have, but I just sort of am like, I kind of love that it's taking time. Like, I think about it as like a fantasy book that I'm reading. I love a slow burn. I love a really long saga. I want like 8 books, each of them 500 plus pages. And like, to think about my, entrepreneurial journey as being something like that, where it's like great world building, really deep characters, and like intricate plot. Like, that's so much more fun to be a part of from a personal level. I kind of had to like take the business mind out of it and like remember that I am a person, and that I'm the person in charge of this, and that like it's an experience. Really, it's not about the destination. It's about the journey and how you get there, and like how you find joy in the journey.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think we've all been sold a bill of goods, right? When it comes to, how to achieve success, I think, we were all told like, hey, as long as you work hard, you put the effort in there, you'll find success, right? It's only half true, right? I think like you need to be consistent, which is why like, I'm, like I thought about like, I think like a lot of entrepreneurs, I thought about like closing down. I just be like, I'm not doing this anymore, right? Yeah. It's so easy to do that, but I know that, if I just show up a little bit every day, just a little bit every day, like eventually somebody will notice, right? Like eventually, that's what that's what I'm hoping for, right? But I mean, like, but I'm a tech person and I'm an analytical person, and hope and prayers don't really mean very much. So there's also that. So yeah, I think I'm gonna have to figure out a way to like measure my hopes and prayers, right? Like, set KPIs.
Wait, that's the most iconic thing I've ever heard in my life. Find a way to measure my hopes and dreams.
Right. Oh my God, I should make that into a shirt.
That's iconic. I would wear that.
Hustles, honestly, yes.
Oh my God, my boyfriend talks to me all the time. He's like, should we just start like a TikTok shop slipper business? Like, we would make bank and we could just make it work. And I was like, yes, but who's going to make the TikTok videos? Because it's not going to be me.
Yeah. And also, who's going to make the slippers? Like, In this economy, like,
do that.
who would do that?
Before we start like wrapping up a little bit, one thing that I do want to talk about also is how has the entrepreneurial experience changed you? And like, I don't know, I have no idea what your answer is going to be, so I'm really excited to hear. But like, coming from somebody who also like loves their 9 to 5 job and also simultaneously like loves being an entrepreneur and like is obsessed with that and that experience, it's kind of a hard, we're riding like a weird line, and I haven't really had time to like think about it. So I'm really curious to get your perspective on that.
Yeah. So how has being an entrepreneur, well, being an entrepreneur has made me a much better employee because I think, you know, I have a much more realistic view of outcomes, you know, than I did before. I think, you know, as a person, it's taught me, I learned my limits, right? I learned where my limits are, like what I can and cannot do, like where, you know, like what can I do before I burn out, right? Or you know, what are my like financial limits too, right? You know, because, you know, again, running a physical business is very, very expensive. You know, so yeah, so I learned that. I also learned like realistic expectations for return as well, you know, because again, like, you know, when you work, you know, for big companies, you put out one campaign, it might not even be that great, but you know, you can make $1 million, right? Like just from, you know, just from sending one email, you know, like you can bring in like $500,000 from revenue. I've done that before, right? You know, so, you know, it's so being an entrepreneur has humbled me, you know, because yeah, so it's changed me in that sense. It's given me like two perspectives, right? It's in a sense it's kept me really grounded, right? So, and like this ties into like my whole business, which is like, you know, being grounded and, you know, like it's beauty, you know, but it's not like, you know, airy fairy beauty. It's, you know, it's like, you know, like, but it's you know, meant to be like a grounding, like, you know, life is hard, you know, like, you know, take time to take care of yourself, right? That's really the whole the whole purpose of why I do what I do. So yeah, I would
love
say
that. It's so true. Like when you work for a company, the outcomes feel farther away for some reason. Even though I have a direct impact in those outcomes, it's like the money is fake. It's like it's monopoly money. It's not my money. The like sales that we get is a monopoly boardwalk. Like it feels like monopoly to me. Like it's not, I'm not emotionally, I don't want to say I'm not emotionally connected because like I love my job and it is like emotional, but at the same time, like there is some sort of a distance that I think makes it a little bit like less tied to those sorts of outcomes. But when you're an entrepreneur, it's so much closer. And it is so much more humbling because you, I think, start to appreciate and understand that a little bit better. So like when you do get $1 million email, you're like, holy shit, that hits different than it would otherwise. And you don't get that experience until it's closer to you. And like I totally relate to making you a better employee. And I think also like again with the distance, and my whole personality is not my 9 to 5 job.
yeah,
Like I have something else outside of that. And so when something happens at my 9 to 5, I'm like, well, life will go on. You know? Like that shit happened, but like this isn't my whole world. So like I'm okay and I can move on and keep going because I have something else outside of me outside of this that fulfills me.
yeah, and I think that's so important, you know, because I think a lot of people kind of tie their identity to their job, and you know, I think in this, you know, like with tech and AI and like, you know, people getting, you know, fired all the time. You know, I think, you know, like working in tech, like it's an annual event, right? Like, it just, you know, it just is, right? Like, you know, every year, 10%, you know, the bottom 10% are cut, and they're not even the bottom. You know, these are like really, really good people, like who are really smart. Like I've worked with them, right? Like they're, so yeah. So, and it's another reason why, I wanted to try this and do this because, I, I know AI is coming, and, and
I mean, I work for an AI company, so yeah, I see it
yeah,
every day.
right.
It's
Yeah.
real.
And it's great. It's allowed me to do a lot of things. But I also know what it means for the average tech worker, right? And for me, the reason why I started this was to hedge, essentially, right? It's to try something different. Hedge against the AI bet, right? Because I know that 5-10 years from now, when everything, people aren't going to want like an AI massage, right? Like,
No.
facial, right? Like, no, you're going to still want someone, right? You still want that human connection, right?
Yeah.
And this is something that like, AI can't replace. Like I've seen like AI robots, like, do lashes and all those things. That's really cool. But like, do you really want like a sharp, like, like robot, like over your eyes? Like, it just doesn't feel the same, right? As opposed to like, having like a human being, someone that you can talk to and you can laugh to. And I think, one of the things I love about doing facials is I get to talk to my clients, like we have a ball, like, it's just, we just like talk about everything. And I love that. That makes my day and it makes time like just fly, right? So yeah, and so that will never be replaced. You can talk to your AI assistant, but it won't be the same as because they're not human. It won't be the same as like to a real person that feels the same things that you do, right? AI can mimic how we feel. Like when you talk to ChatGPT, it can be like, oh, I empathize, but really you're like, come on, like you're an AI. I know you don't know.
For sure.
So I think like the real human connection is going to be invaluable.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think to that point, like, what would you say to somebody who is maybe like looking to find more meaning in their work, but like don't know where to start or don't know what that looks like? What would your advice be to them?
Yeah, I love that. Don't quit your day job. That would be my number one advice. Make sure you're always making money because you're going to need to fund your dreams somehow. So if you're not born into generational wealth, make sure that you have a job, or some way to like sustain your dream. Yes, do what you need to do. And know that realistically, it's probably going to take a really long time, so don't go diving in head first. That was a lesson for me, like,
Me too.
do not like, just go all in, don't quit your job. Right. But like instead, like, build the fundamentals. And if I were to start again, I would start by building a community first. I would get on TikTok, and like start, like I would have, like started talking about beauty and blah, blah, blah. I would have done that first, like if I were to go back, right? So I would say like, start with the fundamentals. It's a lot harder to get people to care. Even you can pay for as many ads as you want, but if people don't know you, it doesn't matter, right? The number one thing to get customers is to get people to care. And you're competing with like, 1,000, 100,000, other people who are doing the exact same thing that you are. So I would say like the fundamentals are make sure you have money all the time and make sure you find people who care. So build a community first.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. It's something that I think so too. Like I also learned that lesson the hard way. Like, was unemployed and trying to make this work. And eventually I was like, it's not working. And so I needed to like find a way to support myself while I could still do this so I could, show up better as a result of that and out of a desperation mindset. And, same thing, like it's going to take some time, but the community is really what matters. And to build it takes time. Like even if you're going to post on TikTok 400 times a day, it's still going to take time. You're not, the likelihood that you're going to blow up overnight is very low. So, take your time, enjoy the journey, and period. Like, enjoy the journey, take your time, have fun.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. That's beautiful advice. I love it. Yeah.
Well, I think that's the perfect way to close. Like, ending on
Awesome.
a high note. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
That's a wrap on today's episode. If you got even one good idea, smash that 5-star button. You can find all the links to connect with Cindy in the show notes. And if you want more founder wisdom, community, and behind the scenes, come hang out at mamir.ink, join the newsletter. And in between now and then, I will see you guys next week.